Hey everybody, welcome to tables video number 2. We're going to go ahead and we're going to start practicing our tables one more time, and we're going to show you a couple of different things to help you improve your working with tables in CSS and HTML. So what I'm going to show you first is our W3 schools. Remember, in W3 schools, there is always reference where you can go and you can double check and see how they do different things. So I showed you last time in HTML there was a reference. In CSS, there's also a reference for tables where you can get maybe more complete, thorough information. I'm just going to show you some of the things that we are going to use. So let's get started. Let me show you what I've done so far for you. I've changed my comment up top. This is today we're going to be talking about how to use the DOM to write CSS. I'll talk about that in a minute. And what I've also done is I have selected a color scheme. If you recall from before, this colors.io or .co, I just picked one of the themes for this page. So to start it off, I took the new skeleton that we did. I popped it in, I changed all of my things, like my title and my assignment name, and then I took the color scheme and I just changed the background color. I put one on for body, I changed header, I changed nav, just like we've done before, where this way we have a page that looks a little bit more like a page as opposed to just my demonstration. And it is definitely much more page looking, and it's not just a little bit, it's more coherent is what it is. So for this video, I ask that you do that as well. So where we're going to start here then, after you've changed, I assume you pause the video and you can apply the color scheme or do it after the video, it does not matter. Inside of our container here is where we're going to start. So we're going to, again, practice our tables. And to create a table, table is the first tag you need. For this one, we're going to apply a CSS class. And we'll call this T1, just for the lack of a decent name. So inside of this, we'll put a caption first. And this will be called number of pets. So this table will contain information about our number of pets for our people that we would be collecting it for. So remember, after that, table row. We put rows inside of the table. This one is going to contain 4 headers. That's only 3 I can count. So we'll just use our little shortcut. This is the first row. So we can use TH. And I'll just put a comment here. We'll call this data headers. And then in parentheses, we'll put TH in first row only. Just as a reminder that we use TH in the first row, but none of the others. So we'll say we need a first name, a last name, and we'll say we need number of dogs and number of cats. And that's going to be the information we collect. So we have our first row of headers. Next we go on. And then we are going to put our first row of data. So remember, for row 1, we use TH. For everything else, we use TD. So this is going to be our first row of data. So I put a comment on there to know that this is the first row of data. And then we'll put a comment down here to say end of data row. And this one might be a little extra. Yes, you could argue for sure that the closing TR tag would signify that, but alas, this will help. So we're going to put, we'll say 4 rows. 2, 3, 4. So this will be our second data row, third, and then fourth. And then we can go ahead and we can start collecting data. It helps, in my experience, it helps when you label what row number you're working on, because it'll help you get lost a little bit less frequently. So the first one, we'll say that Bill Boy, I know, what a name, right? Is going to have 5 dogs and 3 cats. And then Jane Doe is going to have 2 dogs and 6 cats. Let's see, then we'll say Jimmy John will have 6 dogs and 0 cats. And then our last one, we will say Bell Taco has no dogs and 9 cats, as somebody named Bell Taco might. So this, as it is, when you're typing the data, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So when we go over to our viewer here and we refresh, we see how the table comes out, where we have our number of pets, then we have our first name is in our column, last name is in our column, number of dogs, number of cats. So you read it across, Billy Boy has 5 dogs and 3 cats. And in the code, it's a little bit harder to see because it's vertical. You could definitely go and do it sideways, but to me, that just looks ugly and horrible. So it's easier in the end to do it like this. So that's our first table. You can see how the table tags go. You have TR, you have TDs, you have TH. They all have their specific use. And then most importantly, we have our closing table tag. So let's go ahead and do one more table. Before we write the CSS, I'm going to show you that we can select tables more specifically. So to this point, we've used HTML classes quite a bit. There's actually one more option. There's an HTML ID if you want to talk about one specific thing and one only. So instead of class, you'd say ID, and we could call this one anything. We could call it movies, maybe. I'll call it movie table. So this one will identify one thing and one thing only. Generally, when you write CSS, you don't just write CSS for everything. You have to use the classes and the IDs to be more specific, so that you can have multiple things on your page and not apply it to everything necessarily if you don't want to. So caption is always our first tag. And we'll say that this is going to be our people's favorite movies. TR is always second. And we'll say that we're going to have 3 bits of information to make it short. So first off, we comment that this is our data header row. So we use TH in our data header row. So we're going to have 3 of these. Table headers, so this will be name. We'll have age. And then we will have favorite movie. And we'll have those little 3 bits of data that we collect. So afterwards, we're going to say that this is our first data row. Then we put our TR to add our row of data. So we know we have 3 bits of information. So we have indeed 3 TDs that we have to do. So our first person's name, these all match up as you can see. So name is always first. First person name is going to be Gretchen W. Gretchen is going to be 55, and her favorite movie is Back to the Future. So let's go ahead and we should have copied that first, but we didn't. That's okay, we can type it once more. So this will be now our second data row. Same principle. And the reason I use copy and paste quite a lot in tables is it's extraordinarily repetitive. So we have 3 TDs in each row, right? And we know what each one of them contains. So first one, this will be Bill Gates. He is going to be 60, and his favorite movie is, we'll say Jurassic Park. So when we save it and we go back and preview it, you'll see that we now have indeed 2 different tables on our page. So let's go ahead and write CSS. Let's write our CSS for our favorite movies table first. So we know that one has an ID. So we're going to be talking about this movie table. Whoopsies, that would be the wrong button. We're going to go ahead and copy movie table here. So we use the period selector for classes. For IDs, we use the hashtag, the number sign, hashtag movie table. So for this one, we're going to go ahead and say that we have a width of 40%, a margin of auto, and actually let's modify auto. So let's say 2VH auto, because we don't want the tables to be touching each other, because that would be just a disaster. And let's go ahead and take a double check real quick. So we're working at this bottom table only here. So when we refresh our page, you see that that table goes and it gets a little bit wider and it goes to the center, but the other one doesn't, because we've selected and we've written CSS for one thing and one thing only. That's our movie table. So let's do one more thing. We'll just go ahead and do a text align of center to make it so our text is centered, because I think it looks awkward like that. I would rather see it like that because it just makes me happier. Anyways, sorry. So inside of our movie table, I'm going to just copy hashtag movie table. We're going to edit the caption. So we're selecting again with whenever we write hashtag movie table, we're selecting it for one thing only. We'll say that we want 3VH as our padding. We want a font size of, we'll say 30px. And you should definitely put the colon in there. And we'll say a background color of, we have our colors up there. So if you look back for a second, I'm going to go and look back at our color scheme here. So I think for this one, I'm going to use this raisin black, which is all the twos, essentially. So for that one, for background color, we'll use raisin black. And then for our font color, we'll use the silk thing here. This might not be the way to go, but it is a way to go. So we're going to use actual color codes as opposed to just color names. And if we take a look here, we have our favorite movies, and we have our caption applying, our caption CSS applying for one table and one table only, not necessarily the other ones, or the other table. So let's go ahead and we'll just leave, we'll do a couple of other things in our table here, I suppose. Whoops, that's not what I wanted. So now let's do one a little bit differently here. So let's go ahead and say that we want for all table, TR, TH, and TD. We're going to put a border around both of our tables. 1 pixel, black, solid line. Let's go ahead, actually, as opposed to black, let's go ahead and use our raisin black, which is a color that we have. So you can use that color code in the middle just like that. So now watch what happens here. It looks, to be honest with you, it just looks like regular black, doesn't it? But oh well. You see that when we just apply it to all elements, we go and we make it apply to all elements. So without the selector, you don't have it being specific. And that's fine in this case, because that will be enough. So, okay, let's go ahead and do for our other table just a little bit. In the top, I told you that we're going to be talking about the document object model, the DOM. We're not going to talk extensively about it, but with the DOM, what they do is they have elements have parents and children, and we are going to use that model to select our CSS. So for our other table here, we have T1 as our class. So .T1, it is a class, therefore we use the period. So we're going to do a couple other little bits. So first off, we're going to do this thing called border collapse. And let me show you what this border collapse does real quick. So if we go back over here, we see that we have all of these elements outlined with a border. Did I not save it? Maybe I didn't. Okay, cool story. It didn't really work out. We'll talk about that again in a little bit. So let's go ahead and just continue. I probably spelled something wrong or whatever. Let's see if we can just take that table off real quick. And that's actually what border collapse should do. What it does is, as opposed to outlining everything individually, it collapses the space in between them. So now it's actually just one line as opposed to two, like you see there. Let's go ahead and go back for our T1 here. We're going to say that we want this to be 60%. Oops. We'll go ahead and center it again, and then we'll say we want 2VH auto. And then let's go ahead for our TD. And .T1. So you have, this one gets a little bit weird if you want to select multiple like that. You have to do the .T1 each time. And we'll put just a little bit of padding in there. So for this, what it should do is actually quite a lot right there, you see. We can put a little bit of extra padding in there to make it spread out, and then we centered our table. So the last little bit here we do, because I know this video is getting a little bit long, the last thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about some of that object, the DOM. So .T1, and we'll say TR colon NT8th H dash child. And we'll say that we want the very first one. So the first, essentially you're saying the first TR. So for that one, let's go ahead and set that background color. We'll go ahead and use our Vegas gold here. So we're going to set the background color of our first TR to Vegas gold. And let's see if it works out. And it does. So we say, hey, very first row only, we want to be Vegas gold. Now we can also do this in a slightly different way to add alternating colors. I'm just going to go ahead, I'm going to reuse some of this because we can. So as opposed to TR nth child 1, if we do TR nth child, we'll do the first one here, even. And we go every other, we're going to go ahead and we'll use silk. How about that? Oh, no, that's already the background color. We don't want to do that. Let's use copper. So for our TR nth child even, what we do is it will turn the even rows to be that copper color. So row 2 and row 4. If we do odd in that same respect, we'll go ahead and copy that so you don't have to type it again. And when we change even to odd, we'll go ahead and we'll use our granite gray. Sorry, I'm doing a lot of scrolling here. We'll use our granite gray. So our even rows will be copper, our odd rows will be granite gray, and our first row will be yellow. And what that does, you see there, that actually applies. So now we have alternating colors in those different rows. So you can actually apply that particular little bit of information to everything in reality. So we'll do TD, nth child. And we'll say for our first TD, we're going to use our raisin black here. So we'll put a background color of raisin black and a color of white. So the first TD that we type in every row will then go and change different colors. Now you notice that this one didn't actually change because first name is in TH. So that CSS doesn't apply towards TH. That's only the first TD in every row. And then additionally, what we can do for that, since obviously our border color doesn't work anymore, we can then say border bottom. Oops. And we'll put a white border on the bottom of those. This does not necessarily make good sense, but it will put the lines back in between them. So just the border on the bottom side now turns white. So there's our CSS. There's quite a lot of different CSS. As you are starting to find out, the CSS is always quite a lot more than the HTML. So hopefully you can follow this okay. But this document object model is extraordinarily important. And for tables at least, it is something that will make your life a little easier in the end. So good luck, do your best, and I can answer all your questions at a later time.